There we go. And really, why I wanted to share this with you guys is because in 3 years, I've seen a lot of highs, I've seen a lot of lows. I've learned a lot of different things, and you know, all those things that I've learned over the last 3 years, right? If I wouldn't have gone through each one of those steps in my life, I would not be here today in front of you guys sharing this information, being in a position where I am today. And I really just want to share with you guys the power of not just plugging in, but also doing it with the right community, with the right set of people by your side. I know since I got started 3 years ago, there's maybe six of us that have stuck around for the last 3 years since I got started. I see Olivia's on here, Dayton's on here, Donnie, Derek, and Tommy. We're really the six that since I got started, it's been us six that have been here every single step of the way through all of the hardships, through all of the trials and tribulations, through all the good times, the travels that we've done. And, really just goes to show that if you stick it out long enough, right, the right people will stick it out with you, right? So appreciate all of you guys, love you all till the end. And I can truly say that, we are a family, not just people who trade and invest and make money with Bitcoin and social media, but really a family of people who helps each other grow every single day, right? But for those of you guys that don't know me, I want to go back in time and really show you guys where I was 3 years ago, what I was doing. This is going to be a little bit of a recap from basically a couple of months before I got started in this industry, right? So I'm not going to put it in a slideshow form just because it was bugging out earlier. So I'm just going to leave it like this and scroll down. But this is the power of plugging in. And this picture right here that you guys see, this was a leadership retreat that we had in Miami earlier this year, right? It was crazy to see all the growth and, just being able to connect with each and every single person there at a deeper level rather than just sitting on a call and, training them and doing this, doing that, but actually getting to learn everybody's story of where they were before, how they got to where they are now, and, all the way up until when they started with Revolt and now their journey through that as well. Right, it was an amazing experience. Got to meet a lot of high level individuals. We're going to get into that later on. But for me, before I got started in this industry, right, I started in a young age in the space of crypto. Right, I've been in the crypto space for 8 years, but I never had the right focus in life. Right, my focus was always go to the party, get drunk, you know, women and all this kinds of stuff. That was my focus every weekend. That's all I wanted to do. Right. And then it got so bad to a point where it was starting to become a daily routine for me. Right. It was something where at that time, in the last 8 years of me being in the crypto space, during this time period, I had made multiple six figures in crypto, right? So I could travel and I could do the things that I wanted to do. But what I was doing was spending $2,000 to $3,000 at the club every weekend, right? Doing drugs, doing things with the wrong people, getting around the wrong crowd, and basically getting myself to an all-time low in my life. Right. This was just 3 years ago. I think these pictures were taken probably around like April or May of 2022. And this is what I would spend my life doing. I would spend my life going to the club, going home, playing video games like Minecraft and Call of Duty. Right. For those of you guys that know the OG Purple Room, but this is what I spent my life doing. Right. I didn't have any goals, or I didn't have the right people around me to motivate me to keep going and doing something different and chasing after things that I wanted in life. I had six figures, multiple six figures in crypto, and I thought I had made it. Right. I thought I could do everything that I wanted to do. So these are the things that I wanted to do. I was playing video games and going out to party. Right. Not the best way spend your life. Not the best way to spend early 20s where you should be building up your life, right? Setting aside money, doing the right investments, buying real estate, and all these different things, right? But we tend to, as this generation that's growing up right now, what we see online is everybody wants to just go out, party, have fun, and blow all their money, right? It doesn't seem like that because everyone's always like, "Oh man, I'm so broke, I don't have money." But then on Friday, right, you can talk to somebody on Monday and they will tell you how many goals and what their aspirations are in life. But then on Friday, they'll be doing the same thing every single time. They'll be in the club, getting drunk with the same people week after week after week after week. And this is exactly what I caught myself doing, right? I was doing the wrong things with the wrong people every single day, right? And then from there, this is what it looked like. This is me at on the left here. This is me at 4 a.m. I don't even know what drugs I was on, but clearly not in a good state, right? I would take out $2,000 for the weekend, $3,000, what it was, and just go spend that money. And then after that party phase, there was a time where I actually lost all my money in crypto because I had made the wrong investments. I had just partied too much, spent all that money. And then I was back to working a 9 to 5 job. And this is that job right here, the third picture. I was working at a lumber yard making $14 an hour, right? After I thought I had made it, right, quote unquote, and blew all of my money, did the wrong things. Now I went back to work because I had nothing else to do, right? I had to make some kind of an income, and then I was working, making $14 an hour, and then instead of looking for ways to get back into crypto and making something out of that, right, and getting back to that point where I would just spend my time at the beach and kayaking, doing all kinds of things that I wanted to do, right? And this was a couple months after that, right? I would still find a way, even though I lost all my money and I wanted to, do what I wanted to do. I was still living that party lifestyle. And I was actually hospitalized for a week because I had a throat infection because of how much cocaine and Molly I had snorted up my nose. Right. This is to show you guys that this was my all time low 3 years ago. Right. And this was looking back now, right? I can see why there's so many people out there that they want something better, but they just don't know how to get there. And this is why it's my job and my responsibility in my life to help as many people as I can that are out there doing the things that I used to do, because I know exactly what it's like being at that all-time low. Right? I was stuck in this hospital for, I think it was like a week and a half, right? They had to give me all kinds of pills and needles and surgery in my spine to get all like the fluid out and in my neck as well. Like it was just torture for a week. And then I wasn't even able to eat or drink anything. I was hooked up to 2 IVs, and that was my life for a week and a half. I felt so drained and malnourished. I never wanted to be at that low of a point in my life again. And from that day, I said, I'm going to figure out a way to change my life around and get back on the right track. And from there, a couple months later, we actually did a trip out to Toronto with the family for the first time. It's the first time I actually been out to Toronto, and it was an experience where I told myself like I would be back here one day or another. Right at that moment, I didn't have the money to do so, but I told myself that I will be back here one day to experience more of Toronto and just to see the lifestyle that Toronto has. Because Toronto is a beautiful city. For those of you guys that live out there or have been there, and we were just exploring, right? And then I had saved up some money, and then I traveled out to Kamloops after that as well. That's actually the picture of the flight there. This was maybe a week or two after going to Toronto. I flew out to Kamloops, and just to visit some friends there. And then I came back home, and I was so low in my life where it's like I needed something to help me, you know, focus or take that depression and the anxiety away. And I didn't know what that was. So I decided I wanted to get a puppy, right? And this was like almost like my emotional support dog at the time. Super cute puppy. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but um, he really just helped me get through certain times. Right? It was just like seeing this thing that had no care in the world, was just so happy to see me all the time, and was just happy to get food and water and just love me. Like it really just felt like I had a best friend. Right? I had friends, but people who just wanted to drink, party, and throw their life away. Right? And obviously I have a loving family as well. I grew up in a Christian household as well, and then I turned away from that faith at a very young age. And at age 13 is actually when I started to party and get into smoking, drinking, and all the things that you do. And at this point, I really found myself at a point in life where I wanted to change my life, right? And then in 2022, November 2022, my one of my buddies called me. He's actually in the picture on the right in the white shirt there. He calls me up and he's like, "Bro, I just met somebody on an airplane who teaches people how to make money trading and crypto and learn how to invest, learn how to grow your portfolio." And he's like, I want to introduce you to him because I think this is something that's going to help you. I know you're into this crypto stuff, and you want to learn more trading and things like that. And that was the first exposure I had got into the community. Right, this was a different company back then, but this was my start in my entrepreneurship journey 3 years ago. And this was the first event that we were actually at in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We met up with a team out there. This was a couple days after I got started in the community. And then the middle picture there is me at home doing some trading on a crypto exchange that I was using at the time. And that's why I joined this business, was to learn how to make money with trading and investing in crypto. Right? I never thought of myself to be the guy that would stand in front of a stage and talk to in front of hundreds of people, or build a team and teach other people. Can you guys hear me? Drop a one in the chat if you can hear me. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. It just froze, and then everybody said I was lagging. So there we go. So I saw the four-way cash flow quadrant for the first time, and fell in love with trading. I was already um, I was already in the company, fell in love with trading, making money with crypto. This was actually a trade that I took a couple years before I actually joined the company, the one on the left here. Just I put this in here just to show you guys how long ago that really was. This trade I made, I was in profit, maybe $130 on that trade. But this was Chainlink that I was trading, and Chainlink was trading at $5.38 at that time. Right? We haven't hit that low of a price on Chainlink in, I think it's been like 5 years. And that's to show you guys where I started, that I really wanted to learn this skill set, and I was making money with it, but then I just didn't know how. I wasn't around the right community. And then the cash flow quadrant is really where things clicked for me, right? Learning for the first time that 95% of people in the world only make up 5% of the world's wealth was scary to me because I knew that I was in the 95% of people, right? I was making $14 an hour at my job at this time, and I was in sales. I started in the yard doing some lumber work back then, and then I moved myself into sales at that company. And in when I was in sales, I was making $128 a day, and that was my pay that the company was giving me. But me myself, when I was selling products for that company, I made the company $6,000 every day, and I was just one salesperson out of seven of us, right? And that really showed me that there is a wealth imbalance because I'm working my ass off, making $14 an hour, making the company $6,000 a day, and then the guy who sits up top, who owns the company, if he has seven people making him $6,000 a day, he's making $42,000 a day, and he's paying maybe $1,500 of that day, to the employees. So there was that wealth imbalance, and that was the first time that I noticed that. And I heard about building the business, right? And plugging into the culture even more, plugging in with the team, going to events, flying out to different cities, meeting new people. That was all new to me, but it was something that I wanted to do because I understood where we were at in society, right? And that I needed to make a change in my life where I was going to be stuck making $14 an hour every single day. And that's where I actually took initiative to start building the business. And I didn't have much money at the time. Was very broke. I had a credit card and a dream, is what I like to say. And we had an incentive where it was you have to sign up three people into the company, and you would get a free trip out to Toronto to meet the team out there. And that was the first time where I met Tommy, where I met Donnie, Olivia. I actually got started a few maybe weeks before I did, or a few months before I did. I met her there for the first time as well. And what I told myself is I'm going to follow these guys that have the success that I want to see. Right? You can see me and Tommy there. This is a call that I was on from Tommy as well. This is me actually flying out to Toronto at that time for that boot camp that we were doing. And I made sure that I got those three individuals started so I could get that free trip because I wanted to learn what building the business was even more. But I knew that I needed to get myself around the people who I'd been listening to over Zoom. Right? Up until this point, this was maybe 3 months into me being a part of the community. Right? 3 months inside of the team. And all I had done up until that point was trade and make money with the products and services. And then I knew that I needed to go out there and actually meet these people. And this was my opportunity, right? So there's a picture of me and Tommy. This was actually when Tommy was in Winnipeg after I went out to Toronto. I don't actually have any pictures of the time in Toronto. But this was a couple weeks after we did an event in Winnipeg. And here's your buddies, Tommy and Donnie. They were teaching and educating at that time, just like they are now. And it's really cool to see now going back, like how young these guys look, 3 years ago and where they're at now. Donnie's now an educator for the GFU platform, and back then he was just educating for the team. And Tommy, at this time, I think he was making around $2,000 a month. Now he's a director inside of our company, making $10,000 plus a month. And it's just a crazy journey just to go back and reflect at that time. And this was me in Kitchener a couple of months later. We had actually planned on going out to uh, go to another event in Orlando, Florida. And at this time, I stayed with Tommy for a week before the event. I actually watched Tommy go from $2,000 a month inside of the business to $5,000 a month. We were there with Olivia. We were just grinding, working. And, funny story. It's like I heard Tommy say events change lives, right? It elevates vision and eliminates negative thoughts. That's what event stands for. And I told myself I need to be in Orlando, Florida. I need to see who these people are. Like at this point, I had only met the core group. Like our group is Revolt. We had a different group at the time, and I wanted to go and meet the educators, meet the people that are higher up in the company, and see what a convention was like for the first time. And I actually got stuck at the border because it was COVID times and we didn't have our vaccine passports. A story for another day. But at that time, I went back to Kitchener, to where Tommy and Donnie are actually from, and I told myself, I was like, I need to go all in this business. I was just a nine entry into the United States. I wasn't able to go to that event, but I want to help more people make money and also make more money trading. So once I went back to Kitchener with the guys that I was with, we stayed at one of our friends' house, and he has a huge mansion. We were just grinding in the basement there for the week because I still had a flight home a week from now, right? Because I was supposed to be in Orlando for a week. And at that time, I told myself I'm going to do what's necessary to go and hit that next rank. I was making $150 a month at that time, right? And that was the first rank of the company. It's like executive today. And I told myself is I'm going to I'm going to go to the next rank. I'm going to start making $600 a month. That was in our previous company. It's like silver when you make $700 a month here. It was $600 a month there. And during that time, I had made a few $1,000s trading while I was out there. And then also I hit the rank of P600, which is the rank in the previous company, making $600 a month at the same time while I was not allowed into Orlando for the event. I told myself, like, I need to do what's necessary, right? To not just be recognized by the people inside the community, but also be able to help other people meet these individuals, right? But because before I met Tommy, before I met Donnie, I knew nothing about public speaking. I was the kind of guy who, like I said, I just wanted to learn trading, learn how to make money, and not tell a single soul about this. But I became so passionate about it because it started working for me. I started to see results. I started to make money from the product, right? And then I remember the first event that I spoke at. It was like a room of 50 people in Toronto, and I was scared. I was like, don't, please don't make me go up there. Please, I like whatever you can do. I do not want to get up in front of these people and talk right now. Like, I was deathly afraid, and public speaking is the number one fear in the world besides death. Right? It's people don't want to go in front of the room and speak, and I wanted to, but at the same time, I was scared. Right? But from that, what came of that, from me saying yes to that opportunity 3 years ago, right? We had an event in Kamloops not much later after that, an event in Toronto where I spoke at, and we actually packed out a room of, I think it was about 80 individuals in Kamloops. This was the first event that I had run in my home city with Dayton and a few of the other leaders that are on here. And this was just some team bonding that we did. We went on some nice hikes. We did dinners. We did the event. We did leadership master classes where we came together and just learned more leadership skills. And I knew that this was the right thing for me, that I was in the right place at the right time with the right people, because I was learning things and getting outside of my comfort zone where I was still at that time, like, partying a little bit and doing the wrong things, but I had a vision and I knew at this point where I was going, right? We ended up growing Kamloops to well over 100 active individuals inside of the company. And, a lot of those people are with us today and a lot of them aren't, right? But I'm still here because I know and I understand where this is going to take me if I stick it out another 3 years, right? Going back to this picture at the beginning of 2022, where I was at my lowest point in the hospital, just doing so much drugs and just, at a place in my life where I never wanted to be in the first place, but I got myself there, to now at a point in my life where I'm, helping people learn a skill set to make money, helping people see the vision that they were never able to see, sharing my story from those dark times that I was in, to now being in front of a stage of 80 people talking about my story and talking about how this industry at that time had already changed my life. Right from there, we went on multiple different trips. We went to Las Vegas. This was in 2023, in March, just a couple of months after these events and Kamloops that we had. There was some of the boys that we went on a road trip to Vegas, and we actually went to Eric Worre Studios. That's where I saw Eric Worre speak for the first time, and this is where we were at our previous company that we were with. A lot of you may have been there, a lot of you may not have, but I went to every event that I was qualified to go to, right? Because you don't want to miss an event you qualified to go to. And these were events where I got to meet the people who were running the company. I have a picture with the CEO of that previous company. This is where I watched Tommy and Donnie and Dayton hit new all-time highs in their business, right? We got to experience life and travel, be at these events that I never thought I would be able to go to. Where I had traveled one time in my life before that. Actually, technically two. When I was younger, I moved to Canada. Well, my parents moved me to Canada. And then a little bit later in life, we actually went and flew back to Germany to visit. And that was the first time I had traveled since then, was to Toronto. We went to Cancun as well. We did a huge event there with different people from the company where we came together, learned skill sets, met people who I thought I would never meet. I was having conversations with people making $75,000 a month, $100,000 a month, and just being in rooms with people who had what I want and had also been where I once was. If you hear the stories of these individuals that you see in these photos, a lot of them had started at the same point where I was at in my life, right? Partying, doing things with the wrong people, in debt, working jobs that they didn't like, not having a plan for their life where they were going. But one thing was true, was that we were all on a better path and doing something different to get a different result. Then later on, this was a little bit later on where I had started to do this full time already, right? We were traveling out to places like Winkler and Kamloops and doing all these different events, doing tour for the first time. I remember going on tour we went to Kelowna, Kamloops, Calgary was on the list. We went to Winkler, Manitoba. Then we went out to um, Florida for a couple weeks, right? And I was getting paid while I was on these trips. You can see I had the funds received in my account while I was traveling and teaching people the skill set of trading, teaching people the skill set of network marketing, opening people's eyes to see the vision that there is something else out there rather than just sticking to the normal 9 to 5 way, right? Having a job is not a bad thing, but if you have a plan or you have a goal, you want to see yourself achieve that goal, you're not going to be able to achieve it just by working a 9 to 5. You need something else outside of your job to be able to make another income. And at this point in time, I had been able to supplement that income and do this business full time and travel the world and teach people how to do it as well. Right. Then just recently this year, we went out to Miami. This is the picture that you saw from the beginning with the team. We had recognized some people hitting different ranks inside of the company. This is where we actually made the decision to switch companies and come to Gifu, right? We got to see the lifestyle out there. Not only that, but we also got to meet people like Alex Morton, who you see in the picture here on the left. There was Nick Gomez was there. Got to meet him for the first time in that Airbnb as well, along with Julian and Johnny. who are two of the top leaders inside of this company as well. There's a picture. We were just shopping, having a good time, and went out for dinner. There's Derek, Tommy, and I had to take a picture with the OGs, right? And at this point in time, it was like I'm on a completely different path, right? Before we had actually went out to Miami earlier this year, and actually this was last year already. There was one thing, you can see I'm traveling, I'm making money, I have the right people around me, but there was still one thing that I was missing in my life. There was one thing that I knew from a very young age, but I strayed away from that path. And that one thing was I didn't have happiness. I was, doing things that I always wanted to do, but, I was truly not happy. I didn't have joy. I was still, getting angry and doing the wrong thing sometimes, right? And that one thing that I was missing, right? Maybe you're religious, maybe you're not, but I missed Jesus Christ in my life, right? And until I had him and turned back to the faith, right? Found my way again and came back to God. That's where I found that true happiness. That's where I was able to grow the business even more, be able to make more money with trading, right? But until that point, I was struggling with certain things and I didn't know or didn't understand how to um, fix those things or learn from those things. But it was that one thing is I needed to find my way back to God. And once I did, I was somebody who I hated to be lonely. I always wanted somebody in my life, but there was a point in time where I said, I'm just going to focus on God, my business, and my business relationships. I'm not going to focus on another girl until, God sends me the right one. And, that brings us to here, right now. I had met in 2024, earlier last year. Um, actually, my wife now today. We've been married for just over a month. And really, I was able to find joy, happiness, and peace in another person because I followed God's plan and He planted the perfect woman in my life. Right up until this point, I didn't understand what it meant to be loved, but she showed me what it meant to be loved. Right. Because she was also loved by Christ first, just like all of us are. We are all God's highest form of creation. And if you know him or if you don't, I'm here to tell you today that he loves you and he's waiting for you to come back to him. And at this point, this is where I'm at today. We can go back to my party days 3 years ago where I was doing things with the wrong people, not focused on the right things, focused on playing video games and thinking I had made it when I really hadn't. I was at a low point in my life, the lowest point I was ever at, to finding a community, finding people who truly cared about me, truly wanted to learn about me and help me succeed in this life. And that's why, I've been and stuck around with Tommy, Donnie, Dayton, Olivia, and Derek for the last 3 years because they showed me what it's truly like to be loved. And also, truly, not just to be loved, but also they're on my ass constantly if I'm slacking. It's like we help each other when there's certain things that we know we need to do, but we haven't been doing, right? We make sure that we're constantly growing every single day. And this is, now where I'm at today. I've been running calls for you guys like this call that we did today, Tuesday's Trading Basics, where I teach you guys the trading basics and teach you the strategy that I use to make money. I'm a gold inside of this company, making $1,000 a month residually by helping other people learn the skill set of trading and making money online, right? 3 years ago, if you would have asked me, where do you see yourself in the next 3 years? I honestly, I wouldn't have known where I would be at. I have no idea where I would have stayed, where I would have been in my life, if I hadn't found my way back to God, if I hadn't started getting back into this business, right? Learning the skill set properly, getting around the right community, getting around the right people, being plugged in with the events, with the calls every week. That's what I was doing is every week, whether it was Sunday for the family call like we're on today, whether it was Monday's call for the opportunity or Tuesday's trading, Wednesday's leadership call, I made sure I was at every single call so that I could learn every single day, learn the skill set. It doesn't matter what skill set it was. I just wanted to learn and I was hungry to make a better future for myself, right? This is where I'm at today. And truly, I wouldn't be here with a lot of you guys or without a lot of you guys that are on this call. You know, it's crazy to look back, you know, just to kind of reflect and see where, you know, where we come from. You know, Tommy said, I remember this like it was yesterday. Like, you know, it's crazy looking back and seeing those memories, seeing the things, seeing like me starting in this business and seeing the growth of everybody that has been a part of the company since I got started, right? You might think that, you know, we have everything figured out and we're, you know, running the company, running Revolt, and, you know, we have all the answers, but it took a long time to get here, right? Looking back at those pictures with Tommy and Donnie, it's like we were not always, you know, the prettiest looking or didn't always have the most money. We weren't at those ranks that we wanted to be at. We didn't have the trading results that we wanted to have. What happened was we plugged into the right system with the right community and we stuck it out for the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Right? We did what other people don't want to do is we're on the calls every single week, right? We're making sure that the team understands what they need to do, right? We make sure that the Revolt website is fully planned out with all the different education that you guys have access to, right? We make sure to take it upon ourselves to make this an easy experience for everybody to learn how to make money in this industry, right? But it wasn't always like that. But with that being said, guys, I hope you guys all got some value from this call. I appreciate you guys all for being on this call and, you know, listening to my story of where I was once at to now where I have been able to come in the last 3 years. And I'm here to tell you guys that it is not done yet. You know, we have a lot to do. Even at this point, I'm not where I want to be at in life, right? But I know that I have the right people around me, right? I have my life centered around God, and I have the right community, the right tools, the right resources to get things done. Right. And I know that you guys have the exact same access to everything that I have access to. So if you take action, right, if you take massive action, you're going to be able to get those results. Right. If I would have done nothing for the last 3 years and just been a part of the company and, you know, maybe watched 1 or 2 recordings every week or maybe one live session, I would not have learned as much as I did by plugging in every single day. Right? I wouldn't have been able to get out of the situation where I was, where I was at the lowest point in my life before I got started in this company. Right? I didn't know, I didn't have a plan in life for where I wanted to go. Right? I didn't understand that there was better things out there for me. But now being plugged into the system, finding my faith and being around the right people, I've been able to do that. And I know that every single one of you guys listening on this call can do the exact same thing. So with that being said, guys, thank you guys all for being on tonight's call. I hope you guys all got some value. Drop your biggest takeaways inside of the Revolt family chat. And if you guys are not a part of the community yet, get back to the person who invited you on this call, get your questions answered, and I'm telling you, get started in this community because this is the right place at the right time with the right people. But with that being said, guys, I hope you guys all have a good rest of your Sunday. You know, we'll be back here tomorrow at 6 p.m. for the opportunity call, where we're going to break down what Revolt and Jifu is, how you can get started inside the community. On Tuesday, I'm gonna be sharing some trading basics knowledge with you guys, and then on Wednesday we'll be doing the leadership call again, learning a skill set to be a better leader, not just in your life but in other people's life, because that's what it's about, right? Learning the skill set, making money from it, and then helping as many people win alongside with you. But I hope you guys all have a great rest of your night and a great week. That's everything from me. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.